YouTube, Awesome Writer here with my review for Power Rangers Universe Issue 3. We pick up where we left off, where the Rangers, or the new Rangers, just transformed into all these random forms from our Ranger history to fight off Dark Spectre's forces. The powers are unstable, so in addition to fighting in these unstable forms, they're phasing between different forms. Like MMPR Red, whoever's transformed into MMPR Red starts phasing into Mystic Force Red, and they basically have to retreat because these powers are so unstable. And that kind of sets up the core conflict of the issue. Kind of like last week's, there's some lore to, or last week's, I always say that just instinctually, but kind of like last issue, it's kind of straightforward in its setup in terms of what's going on. There's like some cool lore beats added in and some more in-depth stuff to sort of think about, but at the same time it's just a little bit more straightforward, which I appreciate because I felt the first issue was a little bit muddled. Basically after that, they're trying to figure out a way to keep the grid safe from Dark Spectre while getting themselves to safety and saving the Morphinaut, and all the while, of course, trying to find a way to stabilize these powers because they need to use them to help themselves, but they're unstable. And later, like, two of them are talking and they come up with this sketch based off of this idea on how to stabilize it, and it looks like the Die Ranger symbol, which I'm going to assume is the further origins of what's going to become the Die Ranger powers. They also start calling themselves like, oh, we're going to be a proper Morphin Master Squadron, which is obviously another lead-in or clue or reference to the fact that the Die Ranger suits are called Squadron in the Super Mega Force series. So we're heading towards that. I'm still confused about a little bit of it, but when they first use it again, this new stabilizer or transformation, they again transform and do a bunch of random forms from our Ranger history. And during the battle, they do phase again. Like Blue is like, oh, I'm just getting used to this form. And then he starts phasing by Dark Spectre's henchman or whatever, who has like a scene with him where it's like, don't fail me again, Starscream type of scene. And they're fighting. It kind of like opens and ends on the same scene where they're fighting in random Ranger forms, and the middle's just them trying to figure out what to do. And we end on a scene of them about to get to safety, but then Morphinaut's having this voice in his head like, you lead them to their doom, and he's like, no, that's not true, it's impossible. But he doesn't say it like that. But I have some mixed thoughts about this. I'm going to stand by what I said, I feel like in both issue reviews before, is I kind of wish this was just a graphic novel rather than individual issues. Like, I don't dislike it at all. I really appreciate the lore they're giving us, and I like a lot of what they're giving us, and I like a lot about the issues. But there's just something about this series that doesn't flow well for me. Obviously, there's a lot of questions, and there's a lot of questions going into each individual issue, but to me, it feels a lot less like I don't have the answers yet, and it just feels like incomplete pieces, and I feel like I'm not seeing the picture right, if that makes any sense. There's just something off about the flow, and I can't help but think it'd be so much better to just be able to read it as a complete story. I'll see how I feel as the series continues and as we finish it, and then I'm going to reread it start to finish as if it were a graphic novel and see if that helps, but I just can't help but think that. I also feel it's a bit muddled because based on the press releases, it's strongly implied, if not outright said, that this is supposed to be the origins of the Squadron, you know, for the Die Ranger powers, which we're seeing in some hints, but at the same time, the phasing is very much an emissary thing, and it seems like all of the lore about the emissaries and the Morphin Masters is in its infancy, so I'm like, are we getting an origin for the emissaries too? Are the emissaries the Squadron Rangers, and are the Squadron Rangers the emissary Rangers? And they do go a little bit into the lore of the grid about how it's said to be this energy source for the multiverse, like it exists beyond space and time, and it's in every universe, which is obviously why they transform into these different powers, which is something that's been kind of established before. Like, that's why the emissaries shift between forms. I mean, actually, we don't know why they shift between forms, but the reason we can see, like, Ninja Storm Blue when he's talking to Billy is because the grid is beyond time, so it's like all existing at once, and they just kind of reconfirm that. And I do have two nitpicks, which are the same as last issues, is that as cool as it is to see, like, oh, what random forms are they going to transform into, and this is such a small nitpick, but it bugs me that it's only Rangers from our Earth history, especially since it's the comic. This isn't the show where they're, like, pigeonholed. This is the comic where they've done so many new things. I mean, we could show new Rangers. How cool would that be? To have a team of, like, a couple Earth Rangers, a couple new powers, and then, like, one random new Ranger we've never seen before. That'd be so cool. But it bothers me not just because I want to see different things, but because it just seems too much of a coincidence, especially after Morphinaut's like, it's an energy source that goes all throughout the multiverse, which means literally the grid is connected not just to infinite universes, but infinite planets within those universes, and the only powers they're connected to are the ones that happen to be from Earth. I just feel like it would be so easy to include maybe one new powers team, or even Aquitar. Aquitar would be good, because that's like a familiar one, but it's also not from Earth, technically. Or even the Omegas. The Omegas are currently being used by Earth characters, but they presumably had more than one person take up the mantle before that was from space. So I would like to see some variety with that. I just think that's a little bit disappointing. Again, it's especially kind of ironic when you're laying out that the grid is connected to this infinite web, but then you're just looking at this tiny little web of our world. Just one ranger, just one that's different. So I don't like the art style. This is no disrespect to the artist or anything, but it's just not my jam. There's a couple of cool panels I like. I like when MMPR Red is shifting to Mystic Force Red and he's kind of grabbing her head and you can see it echoing up. That looks cool. There's a cool scene where Green does this attack and it's like this echo and it looks really neat in the art, and they, for whatever reason, made the design choice to give the Zeo Rangers a gold outline and it looks really cool on Zeo 4 there. But for the most part, the Rangers look squished. They look like the designs from a free comic that would come with a Power Rangers shirt from 2003. It kind of reminds me of some of the art in Beyond the Grid where they look like they're being vacuumed up. I just don't like it. It's not my thing. But this issue for me was a 3 out of 5. Some cool stuff to enjoy, but I still feel this series is disjointed, and I don't know. I still like it. I just want to be clear, I don't hate it, I just feel I'm very mixed about it, and I'm curious to see how I feel about the whole picture. But what do you guys think of it? Do you agree with me that they should transform into more Rangers than just Earth-based Rangers? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.